We survived the apocalypse, but our road trip is what actually destroyed us. My best friend called me for the first time in a decade, and the first thing he said was, "I found the logbook, the one from the Winnebago." My blood went cold. 10 years since the floodplains. 10 years since I'd seen Wren or any of them. 10 years of trying to forget the smell of algae and rot and the sound of that engine straining against the inevitable. He said he was living up near the Superior Basin, in one of the skeleton towns the water had mostly spared. He'd been salvaging, and he found it. The old Winnie, our home, our tomb, half sunk in a boggy patch of woods. He said I had to come see it. He said I had to get the book. I didn't want to go. I wanted to tell him to burn it, to throw it back in the water where it belonged. But I didn't. I drove the 6 hours north, listening to the static between radio stations and pretending it wasn't trying to whisper my name. The RV was a wreck, a bloated corpse of a vehicle covered in a sick green film. But inside, shoved in a waterproof Pelican case we'd looted from a drowned camera shop, was the book. A simple black moleskine. Its pages weren't even damp. Wren watched me as I opened it. His face was older, lined with things I didn't want to ask about. He just nodded, a grim, silent permission. He knew. I had to write it all down, not just what was in the book, but the parts between the lines, the parts I've been trying to forget. I don't know if this is a confession or a warning. Maybe it's both. This is the first entry exactly as I wrote it, but I'll add the things I was too scared to write down back then. The truth of it, waterlog 05.04222110. The world outside is a green and gray blur. The whole shitty road is warped, buckled by the frost heaves and the water that got underneath. Every bump and shudder of this old Winnebago feels like the last. Soon the bolts are going to rattle loose and will just fall apart right here on Highway 61. Good. Let it. Anywhere but Duluth. We're finally out. The last thing I saw in the rearview mirror was the lift bridge, standing like a rusted skeleton over the harbor. There isn't much left of the city. The water came up and just stayed. It swallowed the first few blocks whole. The houses that weren't swept away are black with mold, their foundations surrendered to the endless damp. After the great flood came the stillness. And after the stillness came the hum. That's what they called the fever, the one that took half of everyone who didn't drown. It wasn't just a sickness. It left something behind in those of us who survived. A low-frequency hum in the back of your skull. A constant buzzing reminder. My mom got it. She's alive, I guess, but she just sits in the living room staring at the water stains on the walls. Sometimes she talks to them. My dad and brother just walk around her like she's a piece of furniture they haven't gotten around to throwing out. That's the real reason I left. I can't live in a house of ghosts when one of them is still breathing. The hum tunes you in. That's what I think. It's like being a radio that can't be turned off. You start hearing things in the pipes, in the rain. Footsteps in flooded basements, knocking from inside the walls where the water damage is worst. The drowned don't stay drowned here. They just find new ways to get in. I wanted away from the water. I wanted silence. The CB radio crackles. It's a fucking circus in here. I'm just saying, Zella's voice, sharp and thin, cutting through the static. He shows up 2 days before we leave with a story that doesn't add up and a bag full of cash. You don't think that's weird? She's talking about Malachi, the new guy. He's trailing the whole caravan on a sputtering Kawasaki, a dark shape in our side mirrors. A heavy sigh. Then Serena grabs the handset in the RV. She's the one who found us this beast, so she thinks she's captain. Maybe she is. I don't give a shit if he's the goddamn Zodiac killer, Zella. He knows the roads, and his money bought us another 100 miles of gas. That's all that matters, fine. But he's not sleeping in the car with me and Orion, Zella snaps back. We can all picture Orion next to her in their dad's ancient Porsche, probably just staring at the road, wishing he was anywhere else. He ain't sleeping in my truck, neither, Mace's voice drawls, distorted and loud. He rigged the CB in his pickup himself, and it sounds like he's talking through a tin can full of gravel. Ren, sitting in the driver's seat next to me, just laughs. He snatches the handset from Serena, clicks the button, and says, "Everyone shut the fuck up," before cranking a worn AC/DC cassette. The opening riff of Back in Black blasts through the cab, and for a second, it feels like a real road trip, a real adventure. It started with just me and Ren. Then Serena found the RV and bought her way in. Orion was her friend, so he and Zella joined with the Porsche. Mace and Perrin were a thing, until they weren't. They had a screaming match a week before we left. Neither would back out, so Perrin took her Volvo wagon and gave the passenger seat to her brother Tobin, and Mace bought the pickup with his savings. Now he just glares at them in his rear view. And then there's Malachi, the outsider. He rolled into town on a freight train a few months ago. Said he came from the south, where the water was worse. He paid his way into our escape with a duffel bag that didn't look like it held clothes. We didn't ask. We needed the gas. Our plan is to just go. West, maybe. South. Away from the Great Lakes, away from the big water. Find somewhere dry, somewhere quiet. I'm trying not to be scared. The others are too. They hide it with loud music and stupid arguments over the radio. But we've all heard the stories from the few traders that still make it through. Stories about towns that just go silent. About things that crawl out of the floodplains on moonless nights. They talk about drifters with dark, wet eyes who smell like mud and riverbeds, who ask for shelter from the rain and are never seen again. Along with whoever let them in. They're just stories I keep telling myself. Bogeymen for a world that's already ended. We have real ghosts back home, whispering from the drains. We don't need new ones. That's where the entry stops. I remember dropping the pen because Ren slammed on the brakes. Mace's pickup had swerved to avoid a washed-out section of road, and Zella was screaming at him over the CB. I didn't write that down. I also didn't write down what happened that first night. The book says we stopped at a motel, that we were relieved when nothing happened. That was a lie. I was lying to myself, I think. Trying to convince myself that we'd left the weirdness behind in Duluth. But that night, I woke up around 3 a.m. The room was cold. The air tasted like wet concrete. From the bathroom, I could hear a sound. A slow, steady drip, drip, drip. I got up to turn the faucet tighter, but it was already off, bone dry. The sound was coming from the shower, behind the thin plastic curtain. Drip, drip, drip. I stood there for what felt like an hour, my heart hammering against my ribs, just listening. I knew I wasn't alone in that bathroom. I could feel it, a heavy, waterlogged presence. Finally, I got the courage to yank the curtain back. There was nothing there, just a damp, dark stain on the floor of the tub, shaped vaguely like a person lying on their side. And the dripping had stopped. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I never told the others. It was only our first day on the road, and I already knew. We hadn't escaped the water at all. We had just brought it with us.